the audio, Your Honor.
Okay.
And if the court would just inquire for me whether or not the jury's having any problems, we'll see if we need to do any enhancements. I just want to make sure.
Or you want to ask them, could they hear it?
Yes.
Okay.
But if they were able to
Straight that.
understand.
Ladies and gentlemen, could you hear what was just played? If you could hear it, raise your clipboard. No, I'm sorry, your notepad. If you could hear it and understand it. So, all right.
Okay.
The majority could not. Therefore,
Yes.
you may
make
play it again.
an adjustment. Thank you, Judge.
We don't know a good time to ask you questions, you know, and so we're going to have to delve into these businesses.
Hi.
And I want you to understand that we're going in every direction we possibly can on this.
It's fine. I totally understand. I want you to do that, right? I want you to do that, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from in the sense that, and I'm sure everyone who's sitting on my side, well, I mean, not everyone says this, but I think you're barking up the wrong tree.
Okay, well,
Because this Mexican the people that Rusty deals with and the way we do business is not what you're thinking. And so, or not maybe what the movies have in it or what all this other shit is. I know, but I'm saying to you that I think, I'm not suggesting that this wasn't calculated in the sense that there was someone that knew where he was going and purposely shot him. I'm just telling you that the businesses he's been involved in, it's not, there's no one that he knows or has known that that would want to kill him. No one. And so this man on the side of my house, yes, I could see that man wanting to kill Rusty because he saw his face and he was worried that something might get in trouble. I could see that. That makes sense to me. Do you understand? So that makes sense to me. I have no problem with you looking into all of this. That's lovely. You want to have 50 people looking into our business dealings? Great, because you know what? It kind of makes me feel better because Rusty's done such great work and done so many great things. You'll see that
no,
too.
I say that because this other stuff with the man outside, we're going to look into that, but we don't need you for that. Obviously, you gave us what you
But are you having people look into that? I see you sitting here, and I want to help you, but I want to know that that other thing is being investigated with the same amount of energy. Because if you're not, then I think you're barking up the wrong tree, and you're wasting time.
Okay.
So you understand where I'm coming from, yes? Okay. I'm happy to give you all of this. I'm happy to find the bank account. I'm happy to show you money. I'm happy to do whatever.
Okay, Detective Thompson, we just heard clip 13.13-1, and there was some discussion between two individuals. Who were the individuals in the clip that we just listened to?
Sergeant Cordellino and Andrea Sneiderman.
Were you present during that conversation, that portion of the conversation?
I was.
And when there was a reference made in 13-1 about that other thing, as long as you're paying particularly close attention to that other thing, what was that other thing?
That was the unknown person that was found next to the gas line in the house.
And the unknown person found on the side of the house.
Correct.
Did she give you any description or any identifying information about that individual?
She called him a Mexican, described what he looked like when he ran away from the house. Possibly there might have been something in his back. She first mentioned a gun, possibly.
Okay, remember?
Yes, sir.
Our last
Yes, ma'am.
Just answer the question, okay? Thanks. So the description she gave, that she described him as a Mexican, is that correct?
Yes.
And is it that incident that we hear her making reference to in clip 13-1 about wanting to make sure that the police put all of their energies into looking into the incident involving the Mexican versus the business dealings?
That's correct.
When you all were asking questions about the business dealings, Did she ever tell you whether or not she had introduced Rusty to Hemy Newman for business purposes?
No, she did not.
While you all were discussing business, did she ever talk to you about investors in Rusty's companies that he was looking at?
Yes, she did.
And do you remember the name of anyone specifically that she mentioned?
I don't remember his name, but there was an investor from Seattle that was going to be involved with the Star voicemail that it did not work out. And then there was an investor from that he was supposed to meet with on the day that he was shot.
Okay. And do you remember which investor he was going to meet with on the day he was shot?
It was a major player from one of the large phone companies here in the city.
And what about the name Mike? Does the name Mike ring a bell?
That could be the person from Seattle.
Okay. When the conversation moved to the investors that Rusty was involved with, was that before or after, if you recall, the mention of the Mexican and the incident on the side of the house?
I don't remember if it was before or after.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. How much time did you all spend talking about the investors?
We spent a majority of the interview talking about the businesses, period, and the investors, the investor from Seattle, Mike, spent a decent amount of time talking about his relationship with the business, with Star Voicemail, and why it didn't work.
And why what?
And why the partnership did not work.
Okay. Now, if we could, we'll play clip 13-2 with the court's permission.
You may.
Is there anybody in Rusty's past that you could imagine would want to do this to Rusty? Not even if it's not, even if that you can't imagine the person doing it himself, but hiring somebody.
I understand. I understand.
Because I mean, I realize it was more recent. He had a lot of wealthy clients. Somebody with that kind of money, if you knew at any point.
I understand, but Rusty had the best relationship with all of these wealthy people that he's worked with. Really.
Okay.
Really. I can't think of one person.
Okay.
I mean, I will definitely think about it, but there's not one person that comes to mind that could, or in his life, that he's ever rubbed the wrong way like that.
Okay.
I mean, I assume Neil has told you the situation with Mike. That's the only one that comes to mind.
Okay.
So in state clip 13-2, you heard the name Neil and you heard the name Mike.
Correct.
Do those two names ring a bell to you now?
Yes, they do.
And tell us who Neil and Mike were, just in general.
Neil was the primary partner with Rusty for Star Voicemail. They're the ones who were conceiving the idea and trying to put the business together. And Mike was a person with money they were trying to encourage to invest into Star Voicemail, to use his money to try to further their enterprise.
Okay. And Your Honor, if I might just state for the record, since State 61 has been admitted into evidence, clip 13-1 can be found at 37 minutes into the interview, and clip 2, 57 minutes into the interview. Okay, now let me ask you, Detective Thompson, did you specifically ask the defendant whether or not anyone was trying to break up her family?
Yes, I did.
When you asked her whether or not anyone was trying to break up her family, did she give you a name?
She said, yes, Hemy Newman.
Okay. And before we go any further with that, when you all you all being the defendant and yourself and Sergeant Cordellino discussed Neil and Mike, the investors, did the defendant ever mention to you that one of her boss's friends, Ms. White, was trying to connect Rusty with some investors?
I'm not sure. That sounds familiar, but I'm not sure who was trying to help out with it.
Did she ever mention Hemy during that time when she was talking about Rusty being connected with investors?
No,
All right.
not that I recall.
So when you asked her whether or not anyone was trying to break up her family, and she told you her boss, Hemy Newman,
Yes,
as you recall, was that the first time you heard the name Hemy Newman?
that is.
And when you told us earlier today that she had given you Hemy Newman included in the list of people, was it in response to that question?
Yes, it was.
And did she tell you whether or not anyone was actually trying to break up her family? Whether or not Hemy was trying to break up her family?
She concluded by saying that Hemy did not try to break up the family.
So while his name came up in response to the question, at the end of the discussion, she said Hemy did not try to break up her family.
That's correct.
How long did you all talk about Hemy as it relates to Hemy being her boss and the question that you asked her about breaking up her family?
On the 19th?
Correct.
Just a few minutes.
Just a few minutes. If you had to compare it to the discussion that you had about, say, the business investors, did you discuss Hemy more or less than the business investors?
Much less.
Did you discuss Hemy more or less than the business dealings?
Much less.
Did you discuss Hemy more or less than the incident that involved the Mexican?
Less.
So, you asked about Hemy Newman, or excuse me, about the boss. Did you ask specific questions about him?
I asked her, how did he try to interfere? Was it flirting? Was it outright? Did he outright say what he wanted? And she said, yes, that he liked her and wanted to have a relationship with her.
Wanted to have a relationship with her. Did she tell you whether or not there was in fact a relationship?
She said that she flat out told him that it couldn't happen, it wasn't going to happen, and a relationship was not possible.
So,
And she said that she was very clear about that.
okay. And if we can, with the court's permission, play
You
clip
ready?
13-3.
Has there been anybody recently, when I say recently, within the past year, that has expressed an interest in you in trying to break up the family?
Yes.
Who?
My boss.
Your boss?
Yes.
What's his name?
Hemy. No, you have to tell me.
Hemy? How do you spell it?
Hemy.
You know what his last name is? What is it?
Newman. Neuman.
Newman. How old is he?
I don't know. 46. I have no idea. In his late 40s.
What does he look like?
Short-ish. Todd's height.
How tall are you?
5'4". Is somebody in town?
How much does he weigh?
I have no idea.
Is he fat? Is he thin? No. Is he healthy looking?
Todd's size.
How much do you weigh?
150.
I'll take it easy. Does he have white hair, black hair? What kind of
Gray and black hair.
gray and black? Pepper?
Sure.
Is he balding?
No.
Does he wear glasses?
Yes. anything to break up my family. He's just expressed his feelings to me.
So has it been through Florida? Has he specifically said, I'm interested?
Yes, he specifically said that. Yes.
Do you want to continue private?
No. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Has there been anybody else? How about previous to within this year? Kind of when you guys are married? No? Has there been anybody that's been interested in Rusty? The same way?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know that information.
Well, I can't think of anything else to ask for.
Well, you didn't ask whether that was reciprocated.
Was it reciprocated?
No. I made it clear, and that's that. But, and this is not an individual that would do something like this.
Okay. And there's a lot of background noise. Are those the other people who are there present in the house?
That's correct.
In the exchange that we just heard in 13-3, we hear the defendant say he hasn't done anything to break up my family. What, if any, impact did that have on the way you looked at the boss as it related to your investigation?
Because at that time, I didn't have any other information to doubt what Andrew was telling me. It seriously minimized the involvement of Hemy Newman in the incident.
You said it seriously?
When she said that he did not break up the family, that lowered the priority of looking into Hemy versus the amount of information that I had already received about the business dealings. It did not become a priority.
Okay, got it. So at that time, did she ever tell you that there, in fact, had been some contact between herself and Hemy Newman, such as kissing?
No.
Did she ever tell you that the two of them exchanged emails where they talked about their personal feelings towards one another?
No.
Did she ever tell you that the two of them exchanged emails about chocolates and candies when she was away on a trip?
No.
Would that information have been helpful to you at this point, which was the day after her husband was murdered, and you were trying to develop leads in your investigation?
Absolutely.
Why would that information have been helpful to you, Detective?
Because that would indicate that Hemy Newman did not care what Andrea said at first, and he was still pushing his desire to have a relationship with him, which to me would indicate he needs to be looked at right away to figure out what's going on with his desires.
Okay. And when you say with his desires, are you saying that they were his desires because it was different from what she had told you about her desires?
Yes.
Because did her desires play a role in whether or not you looked at Hemy Newman any further, or what she expressed to be her desires to you?
Yes.
And what was that?
That she had no interest in Hemy Newman pursuing any kind of relationship outside of a business or friendship relationship, and she was perfectly happy with her marriage with Rusty.
At some point during clip 13-3, we heard a male voice, and it was kind of difficult to hear, so I want to make sure that I heard it correctly. Did someone say, do you want us to step outside?
Sergeant Corlino mentioned if, because she started getting emotional, if they wanted to go to a private, if we wanted to change the location to talk.
And when you say if we wanted to change location, would we take the whole group that was seated at the table to go somewhere else, or or just certain individuals?
I don't know what Sergeant Corlino meant by it, but if the whole family wanted to go, that was fine with me, just to get away from the rest of the people in the house.
To get away from the noise?
Get away from the noise.
There was another voice that we heard. It was a female voice in clip 13-3. And that female voice came in around the time that she was talking about her boss expressing his feelings for her once.
Yes.
Do you know whose voice that was?
It was Andrea's mother.
The defendant's mother?
The defendant's mother.
And do you remember what it was she said during that exchange? That she being the mother.
I'd have to listen to the audio clip again for that.
Well, do you recall her asking whether or not, if you, the police, had asked the defendant whether or not
It was reciprocated.
Hemy's feelings were reciprocated? You remember
Right,
that?
I remember that.
And up until that point, had you asked that?
No, I had not.
But did you ask it?
I did, after she suggested it.
And when you asked whether or not the feelings were reciprocated, did she tell you that, in fact, there had been a relationship between the two of them?
No, she said it was not reciprocated.
It was not reciprocated.
Correct.
Did she tell you that it had been ongoing for a period of months?
No, she did not.
What did she tell you about the length of time?
It was just that one incident where he asked her and she said no.
Did you have any indication of whether or not Hemy would have been confused about her feelings?
No, she made it seem like it was very clear that she denied him, and that Hemy was very clear and understood what she said.
During the conversation about Hemy, did the defendant ever tell you that the two of them traveled together, or did you ask whether or not the two of them ever traveled together?
Yeah, it was for business dealings. I asked if how often they travel.
Okay. And did you find out whether or not they traveled together?
They did. I don't remember if it was this interview or the follow-up interview, that they traveled a lot, almost everywhere except for one location.
All right. If I might, Your Honor, with the court's permission.
You may. What number is this?
14-1, and we'll follow it by 14-2.
You may.
Thank you. We're going to play it, but Judge,
I'm sorry, what number are you going to play?
14-1 and 14-2 will be the clips. Since the detective said he wasn't sure which interview, I'll go ahead and see if I can introduce State 62 as well, so that if it happens to be from the other interview. We have those two
You may.
If it happens to be from the other interview, in evidence.
Yes, this is a DVD of the follow-up interview on November 24th. It has the date and my initials in the top corner of the envelope, and the date on the CD.
And when you say this is there a number on that?
This is State's Exhibit number 62.
Did you have an opportunity to review State's Exhibit 62?
I did.
Does it fairly and accurately depict the follow-up interview that you did?
Yes, it does.
What was the date of that interview?
November 24th,
Okay.
Of what year?
2010.
Go ahead.
And in State 62, did it appear altered? Were there any additions or deletions at all?
No, there was not.
Okay. fairly and accurately depicted the events of November 24, 2009.
Correct.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tender State 62 into evidence.
Any objection, Ms. Clerk?
No, sir, not
All right,
whatsoever.
without objection.
Okay.
You may publish it to the jury at the
Thank you,
appropriate time.
Judge. At this time, we'll take 14-1 and 14-2.
Let's talk about your boss.
Okay.
This is your current boss.
Yes.
How did he approach you with expressing an interest?
We travel for business together, and we were at dinner. We were at,
One of your trips? Okay.
and he said what I think I said to you, which is that, he thinks I'm fantastic, and that was kind of it. It thinks I'm fantastic, would love to have a relationship with me, but knows that that's probably unlikely, and that was sort of,
So it was a very polite
very,
come up.
that's right.
Okay.
He really respected me as a person.
Is there anybody in...
Is he married?
Oh, yes.
He has children?
Yes.
Did he go into any further detail on how he would want to work that, trying to persuade you? No?
But let me describe this to you.
please.
I feel like you're asking me questions, but I'm not sure. I want to tell you instead of some
Yeah,
of
go
it.
ahead.
We're close friends, he and I.
Okay.
Even once he said that, and I said no, we work together a lot. We travel together a lot. I enjoy I admire him as a professional. I enjoy learning from him. I learn a ton. We talk a lot. We talk about business. He's talked about his family. We're friends. So it's not, I want it to be clear that it wasn't just that he said, you're great, and I'm interested, and it's that or nothing. Am I saying that the right way? I don't know if I'm saying it. We continued our relationship.
And you guys it sounds to me like you guys had a strong enough friendship beforehand that this didn't disrupt anything. It was a blip on the radar and you got past it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Was that 14?
That was, yes, Judge.
Go ahead.
There was a brief pause, and then was 14-2. And let me back up. 14-2 and 14-1 that we just saw. As we just indicated, you didn't know whether or not that had taken place in the interview on the 19th or at a subsequent interview. Do you know now?
That was the interview on the November 24th.
November 24th.
Correct.
So when you had the conversation with her about traveling with the defendant, that would have been on the 24th versus the 19th.
That's correct.
So on the 19th, did she give you any information about whether or not the two of them traveled together?
No.
And on the 19th, did you get any information about whether or not the two of them had ever stayed in a hotel together?
Not on the 19th.
On the 19th, did you get any information about chocolates and roses?
No.
And on the 19th, did you get any information about feelings that were expressed between the two of them?
No. Other than the pass that he made at her.
Other than the pass that he made at her?
Correct.
And that was the pass where she just clearly shut it down and
Correct.
it wasn't going to happen.
Yes.
Now, the interview on the 19th, it took place at the defendant's home. What county is that?
DeKalb County.
The interview on the 24th, where did that take place?
Dunwoody Police Headquarters.
And where is the Dunwoody Police, what county is the Dunwoody
DeKalb
Police
County.
Headquarters? And I'm going to talk to you in a minute about the second interview, but before we do so, that was the 19th at the home. Did you do anything on the 21st of November that you can recall as it relates to the investigation? Do you remember what day Rusty's funeral was?
That's right. Rusty's funeral was on the 21st, and we were given a consent by Andrea to search her house for the wallet while they were at the funeral, so we didn't disrupt the family. Andrea had a neighbor that came out to supervise us in the house to make sure we didn't take anything we weren't supposed to, and if we were doing anything inappropriate, the neighbor was supposed to tell us, "Stop, I want you to leave the house."
And those were the ground rules that were set for the search?
Those were the ground rules.
Who set those ground rules?
Andrea.
All right, now let's move to the 24th. And you just told us that you did a subsequent interview at the Dunwoody Police Headquarters. Clearly, it was recorded, audio and video, correct?
Yes.
Was the interview that you had with the defendant on the 24th of November the first time you ever spoke to her alone?
Yes.
And we could see in the video that the two of you were in a room.
Yes.
Was that a location where others could or could not hear?
Nobody, unless you're standing in the viewing room, nobody else can hear what's going on inside of the interview room.
And were there any family members or friends located inside the viewing room?
No, nobody was in the viewing room.
What did you tell her about what was going to happen in that interview and what the parameters were?
Well, I explained to her that anything that she has said, that is said between her and I will not tell her parents about it. I won't talk to Rusty's family about it. I won't talk to anybody outside of the police department that's doing the investigation about what's discussed inside the room. It will remain with us until, if an arrest is made, it goes to court and the video is played at a hearing. I also explained to her that she has to be absolutely truthful with me. I'm going to ask her some very hard questions that I don't even feel comfortable asking a female in this kind of situation, but they have to be asked. She might hate me after the interview is done because of the questions I need to ask her, and that if she is not completely honest with me and I find out at a later date that she lied about the information, that it could cause problems down the road.
And why is it that you stressed to her the importance of being honest?
That is something I do with all of my interviews with it, and the point of that is at that point I still did not have a very specific direction as to where to go with my investigation. So I'm trying to convey to her and make her comfortable with telling me any of the dirty little details about her life that her family might not want to know or she'd be embarrassed getting out, but might be pertinent to the investigation to point me in a definite direction as to where to go.
Okay, and when you told her that you needed her to be open to discuss everything, including the dirty little secrets, did the two of you begin a question and answer period, or was it more of an open discussion?
It's more of a combination of a question and answer and an open discussion. I'd have very specific questions to ask her, or broad questions to see what she might jog her memory or she want to talk about, and I'd let her talk and guide the conversation until she was done, and then I'd have questions that came up while she was talking, or I'd go on to the next question that I needed to ask her.
Okay. So at the beginning of the interview, when you told her, that you needed the truth and you needed to know the dirty little secrets, at that point, did she come clean and say, Detective Thompson, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you about a relationship between my boss and myself.
No, she did
Goes
not.
beyond work.
No, she did not.
Did you ever ask her specifically about Hemy during the interview on the 24th?
I did.
And what information did she give you other than what we saw on the tape about Hemy?
Well, she went into the talking about the business travels, That he went with her to all the trips except for one location.
What was that location?
I believe it was Longmont.
So she said he didn't go with her.
That's correct.
Did she ever tell you that he showed up during that trip to Longmont while she was there?
No, she did not.
When she talked to you about their business travels, did you ask her about whether or not they stayed in the same hotel?
Just from friends that operate in the corporate business world, that it's not usual to have coworkers of the same sex to stay on the same hotel floor or anything like that, to avoid any kind of look of impropriety going on with it, any kind of look of misconduct going on. So I asked her, did you and Hemy ever stay on the same floors or rooms next to each other or anything like that at these hotels? And she replied that they had no control over where the rooms were assigned.
So she said they had no control.
Correct.
Did she ever tell you that, in fact, there had been specific requests for adjoining rooms?
No.
Would that have been helpful for you if you had known that information during that interview?
Yes, it would have.
Would it have been helpful to the investigation?
Yes, it would have.
If we could play clips 14-3 and 4, Judge.
You said 14-3
14
and 14-4?
Yes, thank you.
And how many of your business trips does your boss go with you? All of them?
Besides Longmont, California, or some training, he went on all of them, and I'll tell you why. He hadn't been to them either, and it was part of his goals and objectives, and he'll tell you that from his boss, that he needed to get out there more, and he wanted to introduce me to people also, and so he went with me. I could have shown up at those places by myself, but I'm not sure I would have gotten the respect or the attention. So, anyways. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Now,
and of course we traveled together, so we became friends, right?
how can you not when you
Good
travel?
guy, you go over to England, you talk, right? It's a billion hours, you're in the car, you're on the plane, what the...
Yeah, but you can't help it. If you don't get along, it's not a very long trip.
Exactly. And, we saw eye to eye from a business perspective on a lot of things.
Now, I know it'd be convenient to have rooms on the same floor. You
Yep.
guys have rooms on the same floor?
Sometimes. We didn't control it every time.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We didn't always control where the hotel puts us.
You did have control. What would be the ideal situation?
I have no problem being next door to each other. That's neither here nor there. Again, we were friends, and it didn't bother me, I guess.
Okay, in 14-3, the defendant talked to you about the fact that she and Hemy would talk a lot on these trips. Do you recall that portion of the clip?
Yes.
And in fact, I think she says they talked in the car and on the plane,
Yes.
and that they saw eye to eye on a lot of things.
Correct.
Did she tell you that in addition to seeing eye to eye, they would also be lip to lip at times?
No.
Did she tell you that the two of them would go to dinner together and dance, say, very close to one another?
No.
Did she tell you that not only was there one trip where he made a pass at her, but during several trips, in fact, each one of their trips, the two of them made plans to be together?
No.
And as it relates to Longmont, did she tell you that when Hemy showed up, he had actually tried to make arrangements through the hotel to get a message to her. Did she tell you about that?
No.
Would that information have been helpful to you, Detective, throughout the
Absolutely.
course of this investigation?
Yes.
While I understand the defendant said that Hemy made a pass at her, did she ever tell you he professed his love for her?
No.
Did she ever tell you that he asked her to consider marrying him?
No.
Did you have any information about a romantic relationship between the defendant and Hemy Newman at any point during that interview on November 24th of 2010?
No.
Detective, if you had been given that information, would it have made a difference in what you did throughout the course of the investigation to determine who shot and killed Rusty Sneiderman?
Significantly.
How?
If I received the information on that day about all the information you just spoke about, I would have, as soon as that interview was done, been looking for where Hemy was at that point and go get him for an interview.
But you didn't do that after the interview on the 24th, did you?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Didn't have any indication to emphasize the investigation on Hemy. There was nothing, no new information. She did not tell me about any extramarital affairs. She concealed any kind of physical involvement with Hemy. She told me absolutely nothing to emphasize that there was an inappropriate relationship or an extramarital affair with Hemy, which would have guided my investigation directly at him. So I went on with the investigation with the businesses as I was.
Did you ultimately secure an arrest warrant for an individual but in the death of Rusty Sneiderman?
I did, for Hemy Newman.
For Hemy Newman. And
Correct.
when did you secure the arrest warrant for Hemy Newman?
I want to say it's January 4th,
January 4th of what year?
2011.
So we have the shooting and the murder on November 18th of 2010. And January 4th of 2011 is when an arrest is made.
Yes.
And you secured the arrest warrant. Did you have to use information that you gathered throughout the course of your investigation in order to secure that warrant?
I did.
And did you use any of the information that was given to you by the defendant
No, I did
to
not.
secure the warrant for Hemy Newman?
No, I did not.
During the course of your investigation, Detective, did you learn that, in fact, someone else other than the defendant knew about the relationship between Hemy Newman and the defendant?
I believe one of her friends did.
One of her friends did. And did you interview her friends?
I interviewed several of her friends, correct?
And so you came to know that some of her friends knew about it.
Yes.
What about anybody that might have been present in that room during the November 19th interview? Did you learn that somebody in that room knew about the relationship?
Oh, Andrea.
Any of her family members?
She spoke to her mom about it.
All right. Your Honor, if we could play clip 14-5.
14-5. You may.
Thank you.
And I did, by the way, my mom knew about this Hemy thing, that I must have mentioned it to her. I said, he expressed an interest. I needed to tell someone. I told my mom. I'm close.
She's the only one that didn't jump up.
There you go. There you go. And there's no point in me telling, the rest of the family. But I don't understand what that's ridiculous.
There is no point.
Right.
Nobody else.
They don't need to know. No one needed to know. It
I was
wasn't.
no surprise you said that with everybody around you.
You know what, Andy, I want to figure out how to do this too. I'm not hiding. I don't know what to say.
I don't get the impression that you're hiding anything.
Okay, And I don't think that this Hemy thing is anything. I really don't. If I did, I'd sit here and like give you 50 other reasons why. I don't know. That's up for you to figure out, I guess, or decide if that's on your list. I don't know how you guys figure out what your priorities are. It's a mystery.
It's one of those things that we have to look into and prove it one way or the other. So when it comes time for a trial, the defense attorney brings up, if they happen to get their hands on the information, that we can say, he investigated it,
Okay.
This is what we found, this is why we didn't do anything with it.
Okay, Detective Thompson, clip 14-5. The defendant is telling you that she told her mother. She had to tell someone. Did you see that part of the clip?
Yes.
At that point, is she telling you that she had to tell someone about a romantic relationship she had with Hemy?
No.
What is she telling you about?
About the day that he made a pass at her and she said no.
About that one time?
That one time.
And in that same clip, she says to you, I don't think this Hemy thing is anything.
Correct.
Is that correct? But I'll leave it up to you to prioritize.
Yes.
At the time that she's telling you that, did you have any information about the relationship she had with Hemy Newman other than that one-time pass?
No.
If you had known about the relationship that went beyond the one-time pass, for purposes of your investigation, would that Hemy thing have meant something?
Yes.
What would it have meant, in terms of your investigation?
It would have put Hemy to the top of the list to investigate, to interview him and get more information about him.
Other than the 2 interviews that we have just discussed here today, and other than kind of directing and coordinating the investigation, did you play any other major role in the investigation into the murder of Rusty Sneiderman? And let me be more specific and ask you, did you testify in another trial that was related to this matter?
Yes.
And where did that trial take place?
In this courtroom.
And this courtroom is where? Where is it located?
The DeKalb County Superior Court.
And located here in DeKalb County, Georgia, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. May I have 1 second, Your Honor?
Take as much time as you need. Let's go back on the record, Kelly.
Your Honor, I have no further.
But this time, I'm sorry. I know we have 2.
I had to think for a second.
No, I mean, I should say Ms. Carter. Whose witness?
Nothing more.
Whose witness is this?
It is mine, Your
Mr. Clegg, you may cross-examine if you wish.
I do wish, Your Honor. Thank
All
you.
right, you may.
Detective Thompson, search warrant, you said, was issued on November the 18th for Mrs. Sneiderman's home, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What is the next defense exhibit number? 19? Okay. May I approach you?
Yes, sir, you may.
Detective Thompson, let me show you a document that has been marked for purposes of identification as State's Exhibit number
You mean D?
19.
You
Oh,
said
Defense
six, you
Exhibit,
mean-
I'm sorry.
yes, no
Excuse
problem.
me. Defense Exhibit number 19. You take a look at that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is that the search warrant that was issued for a search of the home of Andrea and Rusty Sneiderman?
Yes.
And what is the date that that search warrant was applied for, sir?
November 19th.
November 19th, correct?
That's the signature, correct?
Now, you testified here in court today that you went over to that house
I'm presuming with Sergeant Cordellino on the 18th with the search warrant. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
Okay, and are you, after having reviewed that document, were you incorrect?
Well, this document was signed on November 19th, but I know that I went to the Sneiderman's residence on the evening of November 18th with the search warrant because I know that when Mr. Sneiderman, not Mr. Sneiderman.
We can get into the explanation in a
Yes, sir.
moment, sir, but let me ask you this.
Judge, I'm going to object.
What's the objection?
I'm objecting to counsel cutting the witness off in the middle of his explanation. I think
Well-
he's actually trying to correct something.
He is,
He-
may I respond to that?
You may.
He is not being responsive to the question.
Right. I agree. I'm over the objection. You may respond to the question that Mr. Clegg asked.
Yes, sir.
You can explain after you respond. Yes, no, then explain. Answer his question.
Yes, sir. Ask the question
Is it
again.
fair to say, sir, that after having had a chance to review Defense Exhibit number 19, the search warrant issued for the home of Andrea and Rusty Sneiderman on November 19th of 2010, you were incorrect in your earlier testimony that you attempted to execute that search warrant on November 18th, 2010?
Yes, this search warrant was issued at 12:13 in the afternoon on November 19th, so this would have been could not have been issued on the 18th, could not have been served on the 18th.
So you were in fact incorrect, sir?
For this warrant, yes.
That's that way. Now you did go over there on the 18th, right?
That's correct.
What time of day was it you went over there?
It was in the evening, I'm not sure what time it was.
And that was the very day that Andrea Sneiderman's husband was gunned down at point blank range in broad daylight in Dunwoody, right?
Correct.
That was the same day that Andrea Sneiderman found out that her husband was dead, right?
Correct.
And when you approached the house, did you let anybody know you were coming?
No, I did not.
And did her mom and dad greet you at the door?
Yes, they did.
Was she there as well?
Yes, she was.
And did they ask you to come back at a later time?
Yes, they did.
And did you come back at a later time?
Yes, we did.
Was that the next day?
Yes, it was.
Now, going back to the morning of the 18th, sir, you got information. I guess where were you when you found out that there had been a shooting or shots were fired?
I was in my office at Dunwoody headquarters.
Your Honor, before I forget, I would like to tender an evidence, Defendant's Exhibit number 19 at this time.
Any objection?
To the document going in? Yes.
What's the objection?
May I see it again, please, Judge?
You can always see the document. You may approach the witness because I'm not going to bring it to you.
Okay, no, if I might approach the
Yes,
witness.
you can approach.
I'll withdraw the exhibit, Your Honor, that's all.
I'm sorry, you're going to withdraw.
I will
But she
withdraw.
still,
I'll
you can
withdraw.
withdraw the exhibit, but she still has, you can withdraw, but she still
I'm
has
not
a right to
offering any evidence at this time.
You can, but she still has a right to see it.
Okay, that's
Because she
perfectly
wants to
fine.
see it, I'm not going to deny her
See
the
whatever she
opportunity.
wishes.
Come on up, if you want to see it. Although he's withdrawing it, you still can see what, you can see it.
Since counsel is withdrawn, I can withdraw my objection, but if he...
Well, at this point in time, counsel, he's withdrawn it, you've reviewed it. At this point, there's no conversation. What's your next question?
I will move on, sir. You got, where were you when you found out that there had been a shooting in Dunwoody on the morning of November 18th of 2010, sir?
In my office at the Dunwoody Police Department.
How far is the Dunwoody Police Department from the location at Dunwoody Prep where Rusty Sneiderman was shot?
Mile and a half, 2 miles, maybe?
Did you go immediately to that location?
No, I did not.
You did not?
No.
How long did you wait before you responded to the scene, sir?
15 minutes, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure how long. I had 15, 20 minutes.
Were you ultimately the lead investigator in the case?
Yes, I was.
And was there a particular reason why you would have waited 15 or 20 minutes before actually going to the scene of the shooting?
Yes.
Okay. What was that reason, sir?
I wanted to go to a plausible intersection where the suspect vehicle was last seen traveling to see if I could find the suspect vehicle.
Okay.
At that time, when you did that, you had certain information, identifying information about the possible suspect, did you not?
From what I can recall, it was a silver minivan with one occupant.
And you had reason to believe, you had a description of the individual who was alleged to be involved, correct?
I'm not sure the extent of the description of the individual was, I think it might have been one male occupant in
Did
it.
you have a description of any sort of feature of that individual?
I don't remember. I have to review my notes.
Did you have any sort of information at that time as to the ethnic origin or racial background of the potential suspect?
No.
Did you have any information as to the approximate size of the suspect?
No, I don't believe so.
Did you have any information as to the garb or outfit worn by the suspect?
I don't remember that.
And did you have any information as to whether the suspect had any sort of facial hair?
That I don't remember either.
So the description you had was a silver minivan, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you have a year?
No.
Did you have a make?
No.
Now, are there very many silver minivans that you see during the course of working as a police investigator in Dunwoody?
Not that often.
So there are not many silver minivans in Dunwoody, is that correct, sir?
I haven't really paid attention to the colors of any minivans. On that particular day, I had the information of a silver minivan with one occupant, and that's all the information we had. So I drove to that intersection, and I was going to check any silver minivan that had one occupant that drove by me.
Did you have a tag number at that time?
No, I did not.
Did you know whether or not there was a tag on the vehicle at the time that you went to that location to conduct your surveillance?
I don't remember. My recollection is that we did not have information on the tag, but I'm not sure.
Okay. So, and how long did it take you to get to this particular intersection, sir?
Within a few minutes.
Okay. Did you see any vehicles that matched that description?
No, I did not.
And how long did you conduct the surveillance for?
I want to say 10 to 15 minutes until Sandy Springs PD happened to show up at the same intersection. I know that they were going to be able to sit there. So at that point, I made a decision to go to the Dunwoody daycare to help with the investigation.
Now, at that time, on the morning of November the 18th, when you were at that intersection, your primary focus was to look for a silver minivan, correct?
That's correct.
And that ultimately became your primary focus in trying to investigate this case, was it not?
Eventually, yes.
At some point, you got surveillance video from either Dunwoody Prep or nearby businesses, correct?
That's correct.
And you could actually see the vehicle that was depicted in that video footage, right?
That's correct.
It was difficult at first to differentiate between this kind of silver minivan and that kind of silver minivan when you first looked at the video footage, correct?
That's correct.
You sought to have that video footage enhanced or improved, correct?
That's correct.
You were trying to figure out what was the nature of the vehicle, correct?
Nature of the vehicle?
What kind? I mean,
Yes,
what
sir.
model, I guess, nature of the vehicle, and what year it might have been, correct?
That's correct.
Because a silver minivan by itself would not provide you with a lot of help, correct?
That's correct.
You were trying to narrow down the make, model, and year of the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And then go from there, correct?
Yes.
How long did it take you to narrow down the make and model of the vehicle?
I would have to look at my the report to give you a specific date, but it took a while to research the video from the Dunwoody Daycare Center, and then it took a while to get the video enhanced by 3 different authorities.
Do you recall the approximate, you subsequently determined that the vehicle was a 2011 Kia Sedona, did you not?
That's correct. I believe we decided that sometime in December.
Okay, that would have been very early December, correct?
Early to mid-December, yes.
I'm sorry?
Early to mid-December.
Okay. Actually, it would have been December the 2nd, would it have not?
I'd have to look at my notes.
Okay, sure.
Be
I'll be
specific
happy to
about
do that, sir. Let me just mark this for purposes of identification, sir, as defense exhibit number 20. And, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, sir.
Sir, let me show you what I have marked for purposes of identification as defendant's exhibit number 20. Is that a report that you prepared pursuant to your investigation in this particular case?
Yes, it is.
Is what you did in the course of the investigation listed chronologically on that report?
It is.
Is there an entry on that report that corresponds to December 1st and December 2nd of 2010?
Yes, there is.
Okay, if you would just read the portion of that report that corresponds to those 2 days to yourself, please, sir. And then tell us when you're finished.
Sir.
Okay, have you had a chance to do so?
Yes, sir.
Does that refresh your memory as to when it was in December that the Dunwoody Police Department was able to focus on a Kia minivan?
Yes, sir.
And when would that have been, sir?
We discovered the year, make, and model on December 2nd,
December 2nd of 2010, right?
2010.
And that was, I guess, about 2 weeks after the murder of Rusty Sneiderman, right?
Approximately.
Okay. Now, you did interview Andrea Sneiderman on November the 19th, correct?
Correct.
And you interviewed Andrea Sneiderman on November the 24th, correct?
Correct.
Did you ask her whether she knew anybody who had a silver minivan?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you ever ask her whether Hemy Newman had a silver minivan?
I don't know specifically if I asked about Hemy Newman. I do remember her saying that she does not know anybody that owns a silver minivan.
Okay. During the course of the investigation, did you ever determine whether Hemy Newman owned a silver minivan?
He did not own a silver minivan. He owned a different vehicle. By the time we were able to focus on
You were
Hemy.
able to subsequently determine he had rented a silver minivan, correct?
That's correct.
And were you able to determine for how long a period of time he would have actually been in possession of that minivan?
I think I indicated, that there's some, or it's indicated how many days that he actually had it, but I want to say it was several days, 2 to 3 days.
Do you recall exactly how many days he had?
I don't recall specifically. I'd have to look at the notes.
Fair enough, sir. Okay. In the course of your interview, you obviously made Andrea Sneiderman aware of the fact that the vehicle that was seen leaving the scene, in which the assailant who had shot and killed her husband, was a silver minivan, right?
Correct.
You asked her that question, correct?
Yes.
You imparted that information to her, correct?
Yes.
Now, going back to the morning in question, I think you said you got to the scene around 9:14, is that correct?
Again, I have to refer to my notes. Again, I have to refer to my notes. I know it was the morning shortly after we started our shift. We started our shift at 9 o'clock.
So you started at 9 o'clock, right?
Then we did.
Yes. And you get the phone call and says there's been a shooting at Dunwoody Prep, right?
Yeah, I heard the transmission on the police
I don't
radio.
know if you get a call, but sure enough. And then you, instead of going to Dunwoody Prep, you go and conduct surveillance for a couple minutes, right?
15 minutes-ish.
Okay. So you should have gotten to Dunwoody Prep about what time based on that timeline?
Between 9:15, 9:30.
Okay, between 9:15, 9:30. Again, let me show you a map from
Possibly.
looking at defendant's exhibit number 20. Just read the first sentence to yourself, sir.
You finish reading, look up.
And if I might just have a
it's the first page, I'm sorry, Michelle.
I think it said first page.
Thank you.
First page, first paragraph, I thought it said.
Okay, tell us when you've read that.
You said the first sentence?
Yeah, just read it to
Read
yourself.
it to yourself, when you finish reading it.
And have you had a chance to review your report, sir?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Does that refresh your memory as to the time you arrived at the scene?
Yes, it does.
And that is what time, sir?
It says I responded at approximately 9:14 to Dunwoody Daycare.
Now, if I'm understanding correctly, you started your shift at 9, correct?
Yes,
You get some sort of communication, electronic communication, telling you there has been a shooting while you are in your office, correct?
correct.
Instead of responding immediately to the scene, you go to an intersection, correct?
Correct.
You spend a period of time at that intersection, correct?
Correct.
And then you respond to Dunwoody Prep, right?
Correct.
How on earth did you get there by 9:14?
I responded to the school at 9:14.
Yeah, that's where the scene of the shooting, right?
Responded is going to. If I had arrived at 9:14, I would have said I arrived at 9:14.
Okay, so the sentence, okay. So when you wrote, well, let me ask you this. What did you write? Let me just, never mind. Okay, so you responded at 9:14. Responding doesn't mean going to the scene of the shooting. Responding means going somewhere else. Is that your testimony?
No. Responding means I am going to, the sentence reads, at 9:14 I responded to Dunwoody Daycare. Correct? Responded means en route to, going to.
Okay. And this report would document pretty much everything you did on that particular morning, right?
It should, yes.
Okay. Now, again, may I approach one
You
more
may.
time, I apologize. Looking again at defendant's exhibit number 20 on the first page, right at the top,
Yes, sir?
first paragraph, read those lines to yourself, sir.
He's looking up, he's ready.
Have you had a chance to review that?
Yes, sir. You said the first couple of lines, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything in there about having responded to a particular intersection and having conducted surveillance, sir?
No, there's not.
Okay. Now, when you got to the scene, let me make sure I understand correctly, was Rusty Sneiderman still there or was he gone?
He had been transported already.
Okay. And that was before the arrival of this woman here, Andrea Sneiderman, correct?
That's correct.
And was there an ambulance when you got there, or had the ambulance left as well?
The ambulance had left the scene already.
Okay. Were there any helicopters around?
I don't know if the helicopters had arrived yet or not. I can't remember. They got there eventually.
What time, do you recall helicopters arriving at some time that morning?
I didn't make a mental note. Oh, yeah, the helicopters did arrive at some point.
You just don't recall, correct?
I don't know what time they showed up.
Were they police helicopters? Were they news helicopters? What kind of helicopters were they?
They were too high up for me to be able to identify which kind of helicopters they were.
Were they circling over the immediate area where the crime scene was?
Circling, hovering.
Okay. And how long did they hang around for, if you know?
If I remember correctly, they were still there when I left to go to the hospital.
Okay. When Andrea Sneiderman arrived at Dunwoody Prep, were the helicopters circling, if you recall?
I don't remember.
Fair enough, sir. Now, you saw what turned out to be Rusty Sneiderman's car, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was parked in a parking spot, correct?
Yes.
There was no observable or discernible damage to the automobile, was there?
Correct. No damage to the automobile.
And there was crime scene tape, around the car, right?
Not the car itself, around
The immediate vicinity.
Correct.
Okay. And was there any blood, if you recall, on the ground?
Any what?
Blood.
Yes.
Okay. And where would that blood have been located, sir?
If you're looking at the driver's side of the vehicle, it was on the driver's side of the vehicle, on the ground, more towards the passenger door side. And that's where it was.
I will cheerfully admit you kind of lost me. It was on the driver's side, but more towards the passenger side.
More towards the rear door, the driver's side rear door, excuse me.
So it was on
Passenger.
the driver's side door, and was it running downhill towards the rear of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And you could see that without any sort of difficulty, correct?
Yes.
You indicated that you saw Mrs. Sneiderman, I think, arrive at the scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you did not have any real interaction with her at that time, correct?
I didn't know who she was when she arrived initially, but she gave, the way she was acting, she looked like that she probably knew Rusty in some capacity.
Did she look upset?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And was she with anyone else at that time?
She did not arrive with anybody else, no.
Did she go inside at some point into Dunwoody Prep?
Yes, shortly after she arrived, Detective Maldonado escorted her into the school.
Okay. And did you go in and attempt to speak with her at that time?
No, I did not.
Were there police officers inside of Dunwoody Prep who would have been inside at the same time she was?
I don't know what time. Sergeant Cortolino was inside Dunwoody Prep with Andrea. I don't know if he was in there before or shortly after that she was escorted into the school.
But as best you recall, on the morning of November 18th of 2010, Gary Cortolino, your sergeant, was in Dunwoody Prep with Andrea Sneiderman, correct?
That's correct.
Do you know how long they would have been in each other's company during that particular time, sir?
I didn't keep track of the time.
And if you don't, it's perfectly fine to say I don't.
Yeah, I really don't know how long they were in there.
Were you privy or a part of any communication or contact or conversation that the two of them had?
With Sergeant Cortolino and Andrea?
Cortolino and Andrea inside Dunwoody Prep, morning of November 18th.
No, I did not.
You did at some point, I guess, interview a couple witnesses at the scene, correct?
Yes.
And there are also folks who specialize in preserving or collecting evidence who are called to the scene, correct?
Correct.
They are crime scene technicians, are they not?
Correct.
And the responsibility of a crime scene technician is to, one, preserve the integrity of the scene, and two, to gather evidence, correct?
Correct.
What was there evidence collected in this particular case?
There was.
And what was that evidence which was collected in this particular case, sir?
If you want an exact list, I'd have to look at the property evidence.
Let me just, I'll short circuit it. Were shell casings recovered at the scene?
Yes.
What is, for the benefit of the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, a shell casing?
A shell casing is what holds the actual bullet or lead piece in a bullet that shoots out, and that's what actually strikes the target. The casing holds that. In a semi-automatic, it is ejected from the gun, and unless collected, it stays on the ground where it lands.
Okay. And does the shell casing come out of usually the right and rear of the gun when a shot is fired?
Usually.
Okay. And were those recovered on the morning of November 18th, 2010?
Yes.
Is it possible from recovered shell casings to make a determination as to the caliber of a gun?
Yes.
And was the Dunwoody Police Department at least able to subsequently make a determination as to the caliber of the gun that was used to shoot and kill Rusty Sneiderman?
Yes.
What caliber was that, sir?
I don't recall. It was either a 40, 45. It was a 40 or 45 caliber.
Bottom line is, you had that information relatively quickly on that day, right?
That's correct.
Did you ever ask Andrea Sneiderman whether she knew anybody who had a gun which matched that particular caliber?
I don't recall asking her that.
Did you ever ask her any questions as to whether or not Hemy Newman had a gun that fit that particular caliber?
I don't remember asking that.
Did you conduct any sort of investigation into Hemy Newman at all between the day when you were given his name on November the 19th and November the 24th?
I did not.
Now, you had not forgotten about Hemy Newman, had you?
No.
Okay. You had gotten his name on the 19th from Andrea, correct?
That's correct.
On the 24th, when you interviewed Andrea, you brought his name up again, correct?
Correct.
So he was still on the radar screen at that time, correct?
Correct.
Had you determined that Hemy Newman at that point worked for GE?
Yes.
Andrea told you that on the 19th, right?
Correct.
He's my boss, right?
Yes.
You knew Andrea worked for GE, right?
Yes.
Did you know where GE was located?
At the time that she said that, no.
Okay. At some point immediately thereafter, did you figure out where GE was?
I don't remember at what point, but yeah, we found out where Andrea's office was.
And did you pick up a phone on the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, and say, Hemy, this is Andy Thompson, I'm a detective with Dunwoody Police Department, can I ask you a few questions?
No, I did not.
But you called up for exterminator, didn't you?
Yes.
When did you call up the exterminator?
It was probably on the 19th or shortly thereafter.
Okay. Did you call up any other potential witnesses or any other people of quote-unquote interest between the 19th and the 24th?
I'm sure I did, but I can't specify which ones.
Would it be fair to say that at that time your primary focus was the van,
Yes.
the gun,
Yes.
and trying to get an identification made of someone, correct?
Correct.
A sketch was in fact prepared, was it not?
Yes, it was.
And that sketch was of the suspect, correct?
Correct.
There were actually, I guess, 3 sketches prepared. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
Take as much time as you need.
Okay.
We're back on the record. You may continue.
Yes, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Here we go.
All right, jurors indicating they want a break. We're going to take a break. Where's my deputy? They gave me the break signal. 10 minutes.
All rise.